Hello and welcome to another episode of GUTTEPRAT with me, Chris, my co-host James, and once more, Tom Dent. Um, Thanks for joining us again, everyone. How are we getting on? What are we drinking?
After
I'll
you.
start today. I'll start
Yeah.
because I've gone. This is a little bit of something different. I have gone for what is known as Eurobrews, and Eurobrews basically translates as Christmas soda,
Oh,
Oh,
and that is a sort of big thing in Norway around this time. There are five or six different versions of this Christmas soda. Everyone has their favorite. Everyone claims that the other one is better than the other one. It is non-alcoholic. It is very sweet. It's like what I would compare it to is like the classic cream soda that
yeah,
we may or may
right.
not have had. It's something similar to that. This one is the local one. So this is one from the Hamar and Lillehammer Bryggeri, so the local brewery. You can get a red one, which is quite common, and you get other different ones. But that's what I'm drinking today.
nice. It's a bit more interesting than me, as I've got Vimto.
Oh.
So yeah,
Fair play.
I've got such an awful headache, and I'm just like, if I drink anything too dissimilar from that, like caffeine or sugar or alcohol, I'm just going to die. I mean, I know it's quite sugary, but like the idea of having anything even remotely alcoholic is giving me a headache. So yeah, Vimto for me.
I had my little howler last week of accidentally buying an alcoholic drink when I'm not drinking at the moment. This week, playing it safe, we're on the Heineken 0.0. This is
I actually like
actually
that.
good beer.
Yeah, I actually
Like,
like that.
if you gave this to me and told me it had alcohol in it, I'd believe you. And that's
Mm.
not what can be said for the most of like non-alcoholic lagers. So giving that all the credit it deserves.
Yeah, that is actually not too bad. I have had that before.
I have one bonus one as well, which I forgot. I am having also an English cup of tea, and you will notice that
Oh
I've
yeah,
gone on branding
nice.
That's what we like
with
to see.
the Caliber and Crofter. Is that how you say it? Crofter?
Grifter.
Crofter?
It's
Crofter.
yeah,
Cup.
that is nice. That is nice. How are you getting on with the
Oh,
like
well,
travel
the
flask thing?
flask.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right actually. I use it mainly for cold, so I usually take it to the gym
Mm,
with me and have it as my bottle at the gym.
yeah. Because
So
that looked
it's
nice.
current.
When I got that, I was like, that's actually quite nice. I want this. And I was like, that is annoying. It pained me to take it over to you. But yeah, if it's getting good usage, then that's
Yeah,
fine.
it's getting used. Don't worry about
Good, good.
Lovely stuff.
We will obviously look into doing a bit more merch at some point at the end of the season, I think. But yeah, I think you've definitely got the best of the things that we've done. So yeah, maybe
Probably the
somewhat
first time.
deserved. Yeah, maybe somewhat
First time.
deserved. Yeah.
First time.
Right, should we get stuck in? The latest Runde games, Rund 27. I'm gonna I'm gonna kick us straight off with goal of the week. And it actually doubles up with the assist of the week. Looking at the Tromsø game, Antonsson's pass was fantastic through to Kitolano, doesn't even take a touch, lobs it over the goalkeeper, all in one foul swoop. Beautiful, lovely. Yeah, and it's really nice to see Antonsson continue this great vein of form as well. I keep on talking about him, and every week he seems to be doing something better than next game. So yeah, for me, he's been a great player this season, and he just keeps on doing it again and again and again. I'm wondering whether he listened last week, whether he's been watching a couple of my tweets. I don't know, but his performances just seem to be so regularly brilliant. I think he's a fantastic player, and that ball was fantastic. He picks it up just slightly to the left of his own defense, moves it forward a little bit, cuts inside, through ball, just basically kills the entire team straight into Kitolano. Just a perfect pass, a perfect pass. It reminded me of Ingerson, and I know that's ridiculous because Ingerson's basically a kid, but this is what Ingerson did all the time at Vikingur. And he's come into this Rosenborg team and started that way. Obviously, got injured. Didn't really help him colliding with the post and dislocating his shoulder or whatever he did. But that's the sort of thing that Ingerson can do. So yeah, to see Antonsson do that with such relative ease and calm, and then Kitolano picking up the ball, doesn't even touch it, just chips it over the goalkeeper. Brilliant goal, brilliant assist. That's mine.
Yeah. We're going to have a quick goals and assists this week at this rate because I did exactly the same.
Yeah.
Goal, Kitolano, assist, Antonsen. For me, Antonsen's assist was completely made as well by the fact that he beat Torp beforehand.
Mm.
That little cut inside, if he gets that
Yeah.
wrong, then Thrumser had it.
Yeah.
That was a risky thing to do, but the confidence he did it with, and then to execute the ball so well, just absolutely made it. And Kitolano as well. He was
What
expecting
a
the
goal.
ball to come. It seemed like he was expecting it to come a little further back.
Mm.
He has to sort of readjust, realign his shoulders, or reorientates himself, and still gets it off first time. Perfect lofted
Like if
chip.
that was a goal on FIFA, if somebody scored that goal against you on FIFA, that controller would be into the wall. You'd be like, "How the hell has that even happened? How has that even happened?" You
Bring
know,
out the
it
shush
was
celebration.
It was that kind of goal. It was ridiculous. It was gorgeous.
Well, it's just the week is the same. I can't knock the past really. It's a bit magical to say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I've gone slightly different for goal of the week. I've gone slightly further south, but not that much south.
So back in second.
No, I was going for Vetterson actually.
Oh yeah, okay, lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was going to go for Vetterson.
The first time shot on his left.
Yeah,
Yeah.
He's on his weaker foot outside the box, and he's put it right in the corner. I know. Again, Solbakken has absolutely hammered the ball, and it is a hell of a strike. But that's kind of pure power.
Yeah.
Whereas Vetterson to do it on his weaker foot outside the box, I think he's and it came at a really good time for Glimt because they had sort of struggled and were knocking on the door, and then they sort of opened the door just before that one from Vetterson, and then decided to smash straight through the thing.
That's about 40th minute, wasn't it? That got
so so for me, I think it's fun to see the old Glimt back to being the Glimt that we know.
Yeah.
But I think that goal and Vetterson as a player at the minute is a bit special, and I think as we've discussed before, I really don't see him being in Glimt next year.
Yeah.
It was quite nice because he came out this week and said that I'm in no rush to leave. But I think that, or at least I hope that Glimt have learned a little bit of the lesson from Solbakken and those that have left on a free, that they're not going to let it go as long this time, and they might actually cash in.
Yeah. Glimt have actually scored 19 goals in October now. 4, 4, 6, and 5 in the last 4 games in the league. They've scored 75 all season, and 19 of them in the last few weeks. So, as you say, they are looking like they're back to their best. And at this rate, they could score another 15 goals before the end of the season. You know, like, wouldn't be surprised if they did. Although I think they're going to struggle this weekend for obvious reasons. Right, player of the week. Let's get this one out of the way. I've actually given it to Christiansen, Lillestrøm, just because this was a hard decision because I'm looking at Christiansen, I'm looking at Wallum, I'm looking at Solbakken, I'm looking at Selectoros, I'm looking at Trippic and Kudasai as well. There's a lot of players that have done a lot for their teams this week. The reason that I'm going for Christiansen is, one, we hardly ever speak about goalkeepers in terms of, players of the week. He's had a penalty to save within the first minute of the game, and he's just saved it. He's made another 3 saves in that game. They've won 1-0 away to Haugesund, and when we're looking at Haugesund, the home form was a lot better earlier on in the season compared to what it is now. But if Lillestrøm don't win that game, then they can basically say goodbye to a medal place. And the fact of the matter is they're joint third. Well, they're just below us on goal difference, but they got 50 points, the same as Rosenborg. That was a game that they had to win. It was going to be a tough game, and I think Christiansen has made the difference there. I think if they didn't have him playing as well as he did, they could have lost that game.
I think it's fair to say that he had a good game, but the fact that he conceded the penalty himself just 9 seconds into the game, I'm not sure I can give him man of the match on the penalty save.
I don't know. I mean, you look at how fast that ball was moved up into the box, and he was absolutely he had to do something there with his defense. This is the thing. Whenever the goalkeeper has to act like that, I'm pretty sure it's the defense's fault more so than the goalkeeper's fault.
So shall we throw in the Andre Hansen thing in the same breath and get that out of the way? I was going to say that was pretty early in the game as well. The other way.
I was going to say, see, that's the flip side of this situation. when a goalkeeper decides to act like that on his own, that was I nearly had an aneurysm when I saw that game. I no idea what he's doing. Rush of
But
blood to the head. God knows what that was.
I will throw a little bit in because obviously I had the advantage of listening to the interview we had. The Norwegian TV are very good to grab the main players at half time and interview them and ask the question obviously around the main situations. And of course, Hansen was then grabbed at half time and said, "Do you feel you could have done better with the goal?" And his answer was, "Of course that I should have perhaps let the defender deal with it, but my style is to be offensive and to deal with the situation. And actually, if you look at the situation, I wasn't that far. I was very, very close from dealing it, and blah blah blah." Which actually, to be fair, he was. But the reality is, and this goes back to probably what we're going to discuss later, that whole first 30 minutes from Rosenborg against Mulder was a classic case of a team playing the occasion and not the game. And I think the whole build up to that game was obviously around the Guard of Honor. It didn't need any fires on the whole rivalry in the first place. Mulder then obviously enjoyed the fact that Rosenborg were not exactly doing things as they should, creating this massive tension. How that game ends 11-11, I have no idea.
Yeah, I was expecting a red card there.
But it's a classic case, particularly in that example as well, of a team that are overexcited, over stimulated, and just kind of forgetting what they've been good for. Because actually, second half, I would argue they were the better team, Rosenborg, and could easily have got something out of the game.
Yeah, I thought we were going to grab a point towards the end of the game. Obviously, when Cornish got his goal around 70, 75 minutes, whenever it was, I thought, okay, we are back in this. We can put something together. I think we missed Serta. We definitely missed Jensen. Those two players not being involved did not help at all. And I just think we lacked that fight in the middle of the pitch. I think that was the issue. And obviously, Tankstedt's up top, and he's like, who's he got to support him? Ingerson's a good player.
Players, it's just relatively isolated.
Ingerson's a good player, but in this kind of game, you want someone with a bit more fight, I suppose. Yeah, and I think we just missed those two players. It really didn't help. But yeah, what Hansen is doing in that situation is beyond me. He can say what he wants about thinking that, I'm an offensive player, blah, 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 blah. Just even from a mathematical point of view, you're a goalkeeper. When you got a player running at you, even with a defender, even without a defender, the longer you hold your line, the more difficult it is for the attacking player to score. That is just how it is. You want to make them have to make a decision as late on as possible. You start to move, you open up the angle, you do something. It gives that player the chance to, take advantage of that situation far sooner than what they need to. And we've seen it before. Like you see it. You see some of these players, like the best goalkeepers, will always force that attacker to make that decision at a time when it's uncomfortable for the attacker to make that decision. That was easy for Brynildsen. That was just ridiculous. I don't know what, it's indefensible. I don't understand it. He can say what he wants. It was a really poor decision. It was poor decision making. And it was the first goal in the game as well. It's 0-0, huge game. Just bizarre, absolutely bizarre. And it's annoying because some of these games this season, he's been brilliant. Some of them he's been a little bit, iffy. And of course, that game, that just set the tone straight away. And yeah.
So let's ask the Rosenborg fan in the room then. Is he number one for Rosenborg this first game of the season next year?
I suppose it depends on what we're doing about recruitment. I think he's the best goalkeeper that we have at the club. I think his name still commands respect. I think he's still a big name in Norwegian football. Unless we can replace him with a bigger name, I think he has to be. Myself, personally, I don't think he's the biggest issue that we need to resolve. We need to resolve the defensive line in front of him in the sense of, okay, say if we're going to go along with the fact that we've got Henriksen in the middle of our defence, and then depending on our other centre backs, are we sticking with Gianpaoli? Are we sticking with Rodgers? These are decisions that are more important, in my opinion. I think we need to make sure that we understand what back three we want if we're going to stick with the 3-5-2, and then obviously go from there. I think could be replaced. I wouldn't be against that replacement, but I think there's bigger fires to put out before. And one of them is basically making this deal for Jensen permanent. We need to take him from being a loan signing to being a permanent signing, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to, because I think he's played really well this season, and I think he'll want more football elsewhere. So I really hope I'm wrong. But like I saw on Twitter the other day, Scalebread is signing a new contract with us. I think he's 35 or something. Now I don't
just to edit that. He's in discussions. He hasn't agreed yet.
Right,
He's
okay.
in discussions.
Yeah. So he's in discussions to sign a new contract with us. I think that's a really good signing. I'm all for that. He's a player that we can use sparingly, doesn't need to start games. We can bring him on, bit of game management for the last half an hour. He's fit enough to do that. He's strong enough to do that. And I still think he's technically one of the better players in the league anyway in that central midfield role. So I think that's a really, really good extension. I don't think too many Rosenborg fans will be annoyed about that. I think it's, if it's not going to cost us much to do that, it's an absolute no-brainer. I think that's great. But in regards to Hansen, yeah, I would maybe like a goalkeeper that is prone to less rash judgment. Like, how often have we talked about Karlstrom this season? How often have we actually mentioned his name? Hardly any.
Like never. Yeah.
And I know that's
in defence to Karlstrom at the start of the year, there would have been some discussion. There was a couple of goals Mola conceded for, particularly from crosses, that he was found out about, should we say? But I have to agree that, and I will also say that when the deal was first done, I didn't see that as a Mulder signing. I didn't see that as I didn't see him as a quality enough keeper for Mulder. But I've been proven wrong. He's been very, very solid this year. It helps, I think, that Mulder have changed the style, that they've been generally more solid, but they've played then to his strengths more.
True.
And he's done everything that's been needed to be done.
Now, obviously, it's a slightly different situation because you look at Mulder's, defensive line, and we're talking about Tiedemann Hansen, Haugen, and the Risa as well. So slightly stronger, back three than what we've got. But again, we're seeing this change in the way that Wrighton plays. He's been pulled back into the right centre back role, similar to how Reese has been pulled back into the left centre back role. Two managerial tactical decisions that have actually worked and are going to work long term for both clubs, I think. And I think Karlstrom has been experiencing that change for the better more so than Hansen has. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that our left centre back position, who do we have there that's solid that we can rely on week in, week out? And the answer is nobody. If we're bouncing between Rodgers and Gianpaoli, both relatively improving at this level, I think Gianpaoli has come in this season and played way better than anybody thought. Relatively unknown player, signed for next to nothing. And we were thinking, right, we're going to have to bleed him a little bit. He's come in and he's actually played brilliantly a lot of the time. Like really good left centre back, likes to push up, likes to connect play, really decent player. Whereas you look at Risa and he does all of that, but he gets back a little bit more. He helps out a lot more. And you got those three defenders in front of you as a goalkeeper. Carl's was looking at going, okay, well, I'm protected a hell of a lot more than I was, than I ever have been in my career. And I think that helps him. Yeah. And I think this is where Hansen is let down a little bit. But yeah, decision making, I think Karlstrom has surprised me because I didn't think decision making and his ability to, like you say, command crosses in the air and that would have been good enough to step up at Mulder. But again, we're not here talking about him week out, week in, week out about these mistakes that he's made. We are barely talking about him, and that's usually quite good when we're talking about goalkeepers, that you're not having to mention them too much because they do what they need to quietly and calmly and sort of get on with it. And I would just like to end the whole talk on Hansen with obviously one goalkeeper that I wouldn't mind coming back to the club, because he's actually at Rosenborg under 19s a few years ago. And this may not be the most popular decision, and you both may not agree with me here, but I think one goalkeeper that we should certainly look at in terms of availability and cost, Jakub Storovic. Because if Sanford go down, one, there's no way that a goalkeeper like him should be playing in the Orbos. I think last season showcased a lot of his skill in terms of playing on the ball. Sancho just have tried to do that this season as well. If you look at his passing stats and distribution and all that, it's not too bad. It is down on a lot of the goalkeepers, but the intent is clearly there. That's what they want to use him for. But the thing is, when they've got such a poor defense in front of them, I in front of him, and the midfield that loses the ball more so than winning the ball back, it puts a hell of a lot more strain on him as a goalkeeper. I think if you put him behind a decent back three and a midfield that's actually going to protect that defensive back line, you're going to get way more out of a goalkeeper like him. And I think him at Rosenborg, I would be all about that. I'd be absolutely all about that. And he's one of those rare players that, because I think he's from Sundfjord, I think, which I thought on the face of it, oh, that has to be near Sandfjord then. It's on the other side of the country. So I know that I think he's from Vestland, and he actually said to me, oh, yeah, my local club would be Brann, but they're about 2 or 3 hours drive away from where I was born. So I don't really have any like allegiance there. So yeah, I think he's one of those players that could easily slot in and be a decent shout for a club like that. I don't know whether he's got the right personality or the right reputation. I don't know, but for me, on paper, I think he'd be a great shout, and that'd be a nice, cheap, easy way to go in and get a goalkeeper. But again, I've got no idea what the plan is for our goalkeeper position. But yeah, at the moment, I think Hansen has to remain number one, and we'll just go from there.
Yeah, I think it's quite hard to judge whether Storvik could take that place, even if he did come in. Just from looking at it on paper now, as you rightly say, there's a big difference between Karlstrom's role and Hansen's role at their respective clubs. There's a big difference between Storvik, what we've been able to see from him so far, and what he could bring to Rosenborg. So it definitely would be a matter of bring him in, see how it goes, assuming Sandefjord do go down. But yeah, it's difficult one to judge until we see what he can do.
Who else have we got for players of the week then?
I've gone for someone that you mentioned in your little shortlist for player of the week, and that is Latko Tripic at Viking. Big fan of him. I bang on about him all the time on our ESM fantasy episodes. Both his shots on target this week, 2 assists, 5 key passes. Absolute talisman for that Viking side. He is the heart of that team. 18 attempted crosses as well, 16 attempted long balls. He's constantly just trying to create. He's doing everything he can to put a firework up that Viking side, and they really did need it this week. They would not have been taking anything from that Yev game if he wasn't on his A game.
Mighty Yev.
Well, quite. It's quite bad to have to say that about this Viking team at this point in the season. Didn't really expect to be saying this, but yeah, they've really, really have slipped. But Tripic all over the pitch. He made 10 recoveries as well, which I believe was the most of any Viking player. He's just absolutely everywhere. Tough player to deal with. And they really, really did need him to step up. Both of his assists as well. Absolutely fantastic. First one, a corner, which as a Reading fan, I want to say is very Tom Ince-esque. Beautiful, beautiful corner. That was like destined for the back of the net the second it hit Bracalo's head.
Do you think anybody knows what you're on about when you mention Reading?
Tom Ince, mate. Everyone knows Tom Ince. Maybe not those in Norway, but Tom Ince, big name, big name. Second assist was a close silver medal for my assist of the week. Beautiful ball to the back post, weighted straight to Traore. There was no line of vision there. He's just curled it superbly, runtime superbly. So yeah, Tripic for me changed that game and gets my performance of the week.
Fair enough. I mean, he was on my shortlist along with other players, as I mentioned before. It's a weird one with Tripic because he started the season off so well, and then obviously injuries and whatnot, and then suspensions throughout the season and just lack of consistency. The fact of the matter is, when you play him, you are always guaranteed a performance like that every now and then. Yeah. And yeah, it's just ridiculous that they needed him. If they didn't have him on the pitch, then they lost that game. Simple as that. And that's away to Yev. Yeah, that sort of says it all about Viking, I think.
Yeah.
But why? Let's take this before we go to what has gone on at Viking. I think, like, from the Norwegian side, a lot of people have made fun of the fact that they were saying they're going for gold, and they put themselves in the same breath as those. If anyone, by the way, hasn't seen the contract signing of the two coaches before the start of the season, It's worth a look because it is one of the most cringe-worthy contract signs I think I've ever seen in my life. And then they sold Brescia, of course.
See, I actually do have a bit on this because for our top 5 this week, I do talk about this. So,
okay, well, should we part that then? Or do we
if you want to part that a little bit,
okay.
and then we can have a discussion about that later. Yeah.
Fine. Okay, so my performance of the week then. The cynic in me wants to say "come soon" for slightly political reasons, but that's not fair. So my performance of the week is actually someone who has not been given as much credit recently as he probably should be, and that's Esbjorn in Glimt.
Fair enough.
Yeah. And the reason for that is because I think it's gone a little bit under the radar how much improvement he's made as the year's gone on, and how much he's now kind of fully integrated into that Glimt machine. 1 goal, 2 assists, obviously against Christian, but he's starting to really consistently give goal points now, and I think it's not like the old strikers of before with Glimt, where it's 20 goals, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of, he makes everyone else, he's such a focal point, and like he's there where he needs to be, that I think that his improvement's actually worth a mention. It's not strange, but it's interesting to see what will happen next year with Salveson in the mix as well. I am still a big believer that with a full preseason, Salveson will come good.
Absolutely.
But it's an interesting conundrum at the minute that Esbjorn started to find some form and start to contribute to this well-oiled Glimt machine.
I think with Esbjorn, one thing that goes in his favour lately is his positioning. His off the ball movement is fantastic. Like whenever I see someone like Pellegrino or Solbakken with the ball, Esbjorn is in the right position. I think a lot more so now than earlier on in the season. And in that game against Christensen, he actually played 5 key passes. So he touched the ball 22 times and he's made 5 key passes out of that. So he's created 5 goal scoring opportunities from 22 touches. So it was a very, very efficient performance. And I think that's your point, isn't it? The fact is now he's getting involved a lot more, but then it's not only just, the effort's there and, bless him, he's doing really well. No. He's actually shooting and he's scoring and he's passing and he's getting assists. And to have that as your central focal prong of that front 3 is fantastic, because now you're not relying on Pellegrino to do all the work, And as we saw hilariously last week, Pellegrino did absolutely nothing, but he didn't need to, and we'll come on to that in a little bit because I'm really happy about that. But we're looking at what Esbjorn and Solbakken. They scored 3 goals between them and got 2 assists. When you got someone like Solbakken coming back into the team and he's on form, he's the best player in the league. Like he just is. He can move for 5-6 million euros, which is what we were talking about earlier on in the season, that he was going to move for a decent amount of money. Obviously, injuries haven't helped. But when he comes back into form and against Christensen, then the way that he hits the ball is absolutely insane. He hits the ball. I would love to know how hard he actually hits the ball, because both of his goals in that Christensen game nearly broke the net.
Yeah.
Both of them. And I think Esbjorn linking up with Solbakken when they're both on fire like that, when they're both on form, it's an absolute boon for Glimt. And unfortunately, Salveson hasn't done the same for Glimt yet. But next season, I would expect some kind of difference between the two.
Not only has this run of form for Esbjorn come at the perfect time for Glimt, but it's come at the perfect time for him, because we talk about Salveson having now a pre-season to reset, readjust, and hopefully take the top spot back next year. But Glimt could be playing as long into the winter as we can foresee with European games coming. So if Esbjorn is going into that, the season's coming to an end, and Esbjorn is the main man through those European games, if he has the chance to keep that up, he's not going to be droppable at the start of next season.
Yeah. Like, Tom, what's your opinion on it as a part of a coaching setup? If you're in this position where you got someone like Esbjorn and Salveson, obviously you brought in Salveson, you brought in Esbjorn, they both struggled for consistency and form. We're thinking long-term Salveson is the one to lead that front 3, but then Esbjorn's recent form combined with Salveson's recent form is sort of painting a different picture. How do you approach that? Do you still think, okay, Salveson's still our ideal, centre forward? Or do you think, well, actually, maybe Esbjord's ahead and we need to rotate them all or give Esbjord more time in the first team? What, what's your approach to that situation? How do you deal with that?
Well, I think that the first point to that is I think that they obviously signed him with a. It's not the first time Glimt tried to sign him, so they wouldn't have signed him without having done their research, and they tried to sign him in 2020 before he did his cruise ship. To put that perspective in first, they've obviously signed him because they think he fits the system.
Yeah.
Now, the difficulty for any player when they come midway through a season is you've got to hit the ground running. And in some clubs, you get this situation where they sign you and basically say, right, we've signed you because we know you're good, off you go. And you kind of you're more reliant on the relationships you build with individual players to affect then how your performances go. So I would put that in a comparison to someone, for example, like Moses in Alderson. When they signed him as the main striker for Alderson, they would have signed him in a way just to say, right, off you go, and then sort of gone with it from that.
Yeah, do your thing.
Basically, save us some relegation.
Yeah, pretty much. Go score some goals. And I would argue Forest and Christensen the same. But with Glimt, they have such a clear identity and a way of playing and a way of approaching what each position should look like and their roles within that you need time to understand how your position affects, because you're a cog in a whole machine. So everyone has said for so long that in that Glimt team you could put your grandma as a striker and they would still get 20 goals because everything else around them goes on as well as it is. But you got to remember, when he joined, Glimt were going through a rough patch.
Yeah,
they were going through a period where they were struggling to score goals. They were struggling to get wins. There was loads of games. There was no time on the training pitch to actually work on anything. It was game, recovery, next game, recovery, next game. So I think it's a question. As I say, I don't think you can judge it as a coach perspective. Now it would be a case of use this time to see, okay, where are they at?
Yeah.
Where how close are they actually to where we see that position to be? And then if they're not as close as you'd hope them to be, then you have to find a way, as they've done with Esbjord. And then when they come back in January, they'll have individual conversations with each player. And with Esbjord, it will be great. You ended the season perfectly. You've taken massive strides forward, and you've got better, and you've got more used to the system. And now it's the case of you need to continue that.
Yeah.
And for Salverson, it's more of a case of using time then to go, okay, this is where you need to improve. Here's an example of you in the winter where you've tried to do this and we don't want you to do that. We want you to do this. And then you have a block of time to actually go and work on that. And then that's the difficulty when you do business in the summer. That is the difficulty. You hear Arling Moo this week talk about Christian Eriksen coming in and about how he's getting better for every week he's there, and he's improving all the time because he's getting used to playing in a Mulder system. Whereas in HamKam, he was pretty much allowed to do what he wanted because he was the best player. And that takes time as well. If you're used to just doing what you have been allowed to do, and all of a sudden you've got to fit yourself into the collective, that takes time. So I think there'll be the use for both strikers next year. I think it's just time.
I am, obviously, as we all know, I'm a big Salverson fan myself. So when he was first linked, obviously then he got the injury and then didn't move, and then he moved in the end. It's a bit of a shame to see that it's taken him a while to really get going in that team. I don't know. I mean, I think going forward, I would like to think that he is going to be the main centre forward for them next season. But I guess as a backup, if you got an Esbjord who can come on the pitch in the last 30, 40 minutes and do something, it's never a bad situation. And that's a strange thought in the sense of maybe they don't rely on one centre forward next season when they've always done that. For as long as I can remember, obviously Glimt, we know what their lineup's going to be before every single game. So when you're playing fantasy, you pretty much don't need early team news for Glimt because you just look at the last team that played, and that's pretty much going to be the starting lineup. So yeah, the idea that next season maybe there's a bit of rotation between the centre forwards.
There will be.
Yeah.
Knudsen's come out and said that as such, that he's learned lessons before. Last year when they had the success in Europe, it was very much a case of this is this is the team. We keep the same team all the time. We don't change it. I think this year he's realised they've played something close to 60 games now. This year.
It has been non-stop for them. Yeah,
and I think they've realised that it's not so much the physical side; it is the mental side and the emotional side that it's very, very difficult for players to perform time after time after time. I think they've had more injuries this year than they used to. So I think that they will start going down what Mulder have been very good to do the last few years, and that is have a very good wide squad and then rotate players in and out game by game.
And I think just while we're on the topic of Glimt before we move on, I think the biggest loser for Glimt this season has been Elias Hagen, because this was meant to be his year where he was going to step in, obviously, into that Berg role and show what he can do. And he's done that beautifully. Obviously, they've re-signed Berg, and then Hagen's just disappeared.
Yeah,
and I think that's really unfortunate. I think that's really unfortunate. Could you see him going somewhere else, or is he?
I think I'll tell you that after tonight, because there's a Patrick Berg is a doubt,
right?
With a potential concussion from the weekend.
Yes, I did see that online. Yeah,
and if he is a doubt, then Glimt are going to have a problem where not a problem, but they've got Gudenbach, Vetterson, Saltnes. Now, Saltnes could very simply slip into the Patrick Berg role.
Yeah.
But if they do that, then that for me tells you everything you need to know about where they see Elias Hagen.
Yeah.
Right.
If Elias Hagen goes straight into the position for Patrick Berg, then I think that the answer to your follow-up question will be no, they won't let him go anywhere. And I don't think they want to. He signed a new contract in the beginning of the year, so I don't think he particularly wants to go anywhere. And obviously when he signed it, he was the main man, and now he's not. But I think that's going to be an interesting one to watch this evening to see what is the choice, because I think that then will also give a bit of a signal as to his standing in that group at the minute.
Yeah. So I guess really Vetty is the one that's gone.
Yeah, I mean he's been injured. He had a hip operation not so long ago. So but I think
he was seen as the backup to Hagen, right?
He was.
They got rid of Berg,
but they also signed him on the notion that he was injured a lot, and I think this year he's still been injured a lot. So we'll see what happens with that. But they've got a lot of good players. They're going to be it's going to be a bit of a reshuffle. So they'll probably try and they'll be linked with every player under the sun again.
Yeah,
like they usually are, and we'll see how many they get in the time they get.
Yeah. Esbjørn Salvesen, I do fully expect that trading of play to continue. Like Esbjørn this season, when he came into the league, I think it was in our first ever episode, we talked about top 3 goal scorers for the season. And I had Esbjørn in there. But never did I see that we'd be, 27 games into the season. He's played 90 minutes in the league twice, which is mental for, as you rightly say, a Glimt lineup that very, very rarely changes things up. He's just not, he's taken his time. He's now there. It's just a matter of how much time Salvesen's going to take to get into the same mindset.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting seeing the change in between now and the start of next season. Obviously, Europe as well going on. I'm sure there'll be loads more to talk about, even during the off season, about that team, because there's there's so much going on, so much going on in the Glimt camp at the moment.
Let's get to the top 5, because I think this week's quite an interesting one, and we might need a bit of time for it.
Yes, right. So top 5 this week is top 5 shocks of the season. Now, it's a very, very loose category. This could be top 5 shocks in terms of managerial decisions, top 5 shocks in terms of own goals, results, form, double-headed results. Whatever we think has been shocking this season, that's going in. And I think we're going to have, I would be amazed if any of us have any crossover between our top 5s, because I think we've probably all looked at this a slightly different way to one another. So it's going to be quite an interesting discussion here. I'm going to kick us off. I'm going to get us going, and I'm going to choose one of mine at random, and I'm going to go with maybe a slightly boring one. Sandfjord winning 5-0 away to Gudse. I could not believe that happened. I could not envisage that happening at all. We're talking about a team that was playing a Gudse team that isn't the same as it is now at this point in the season. This was earlier on. This was Runde 4, so very early on.
Just for clarity here, can you remember what the result before that game was for Sandefjord? Which makes it even more surprising.
Didn't they lose by the same scoreline?
Oh, you mean the game before
Yeah,
that game? I mean, I don't
I'll
have it
say
off.
I'll save you some time.
Yeah, save me
Cam
some
beat them
time.
3-0.
Right. Okay, there we go. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Shocking
So
to you as more than
it
anyone.
was,
Yeah.
but it was shocking. I remember we were in Christian. We played Christiansund that round, and we were sat in the hotel and we were watching it. Like, what on earth is going on here?
Yeah.
Because, as you say, we comfortably beat Sandefjord the week before,
Mm.
and then they not only did they comfortably beat Gutsa, they comfortably beat Gutsa in Gutsa.
And
Like,
it was pretty much full strength side as well for Goodser.
it's difficult to beat. It's difficult to beat Gutsa at Gutsa in the best of times, but to win 5-0
Yeah.
was unheard of.
Ridiculous.
Is unheard of.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
They had Mira, Vilsvik, Gunnarsson, Valsvik, Grugar, Hover, Stengel, Krasnicki, Tokstad, Friday, and Stenovic. That was their lineup. So it's not
Yeah.
like they even were, rummaging around in like the reserves or, their version of under 18s or whatever it was. They're pretty much playing as strong a side as they could have put out. And yeah, we were thinking, right, from fantasy perspective, this is a game to target. This is one where you want Herver in. This is one where you want to captain him. Absolutely brilliant. Vilsvik straight in there. He's going to get like 2 assists, 5-0. Just absolutely insane. It's absolutely insane. And you got to remember as well, this is a Sandefjord side that have only won 6 games all season, right? And away from home, away from home, they either win or lose, right? They've won 5 and they've lost 9. They've only scored 18 goals away from home. 5 of them came in that one game. Do you know
I
what
think
I mean?
what makes it even more shocking as well, especially in retrospect, is the results that followed it. Like their next 3 home games for Strømsgodset was a 3-0 win against Rosenborg, a 3-2 win against Vålerenga, and then a 3-2 win against Viking when Viking was still performing.
Yeah.
So even more so, looking at the results afterwards, it was a complete anomaly. It's not as if they went on from that to crumble, to lose this resilience at home. They then just went on, beat 3-0 Lillestrøm in the next home game as well. Exceptional run of home form, except a 5-0 loss to Sandefjord.
And it was just mad how well Ofkir played in that game, getting a hat trick, 6 shots, being heavily involved. That's the kind of player that he is. He's able to put a performance in like that and then carry his team through to win. But to win 5-0, it wasn't just like they were winning by his goals, they were winning by another 2 goals as well. So yeah, for me, I think that is probably the shock of the season in regards to individual results. I never expected the scoreline to be anywhere near that. And especially for Goodson to not even score is absolutely ridiculous.
Crazy.
Can I challenge that one? Because I have a scoreline as well.
Go for it.
One of my
Challenge.
surprises for the year.
Challenge away.
Molde 1, Jaev 1.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jaev were winning for a good period of that game.
Yeah.
This was a Jaev team that had taken no points away from home. No points away from home. No one gave them a hope or a prayer. Yes, it was a slightly reduced Molde team. But at that period of time, Molde were flying and just about to go into Europe. So for a team who are now currently bottom of the table to have taken a point away from the quite clear champions of the league has to go down as one of the shocks of the year. And not only to have got a point, but to have been leading for a good period of that game. And it wasn't like it was a penalty or it was a very well taken goal from Schütze, the German striker, from a counter attack, if I remember correctly.
Just by the way, just stop you there. Molde were winning 1-0.
Were they?
Yeah. Fafana scored in the 51st minute and then Schroeder equalised in the 65th minute.
Okay, well, even the fact to equalise then.
Yeah.
Bad research from me. But the fact that they got a point, my point is the fact they got a point as the bottom team against the top team in Molde, for me is not as shocking as a 5-0, but in terms of the context and the world, and also to add in, this was a midweek game, so it was not they didn't have a full week to prepare. Molde had played us on the Sunday before. Yavin had a game that weekend as well. So to go from there to there is, in my eyes, extremely impressive.
Yeah, and I think didn't Overwright save a penalty as well?
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he did. Yeah. So just to add that into the events of that game as well.
Yeah, everything came together at once.
See, yeah, they're a weird team. They're a weird team. Like they'll have these games where they just play out of their skin, but then they'll lose. And you think, "Oh, God, like it's not even like they've played poorly. And most recently, I guess the 4-3 loss against Sarpsborg. They were in that game for large periods of that game. Obviously, Heinz being the main difference there, getting the hat trick and just putting the game to bed. But they were competitive throughout the entirety of that game, and I think we've seen that a lot of occasions in a lot of games this season. Yeah, they're bottom of the table, but do they deserve to be? I mean, I suppose overall it's where they are. So you would say yes. This is kind of the way that sport usually goes, but it's not like we're talking about like the infamous Derby side or whatever it was, or Fulham, who basically got like
Derby, yeah.
got like 9 points or 11 points over the course of the entire Premier League season or something ridiculous. I don't think we can look at them and go, oh, you know what, they didn't deserve to be in this league. When you draw in 1-1 away to Mulder, that's obviously never a bad result, and that's the only game that Mulder have drawn at home. They've won 11, drawn 1 and lost 2. Okay, they've lost twice, but for them to not win that game, you would absolutely think that they would have done. So I can definitely see where you're coming from with that. But yeah, it's just unfortunate that Yev aren't really doing much else. That's all.
Just to answer your point about surprising, they are, according to Y-Scout, they are expected to have 17.7 points. They currently have 18.
18, yeah.
And without going through the table, Christensen should be on 32.
Mad.
Sorry.
14 points. 14 points off that. Bloody hell.
Awful. I didn't actually have a result in my top 5, but I do have one special mention, which is a result, and I toyed with putting in my top 5, but didn't. It does involve an Eliteserien team, but it wasn't an Eliteserien game, and that's Glimt losing 1-0 to Linfield in Europe. I thought that was a ridiculous result, but I couldn't justify quite putting that in my top 5. Just a little bit touchy whether that's Eliteserien.
I watched that game. The fact that game ended 1-0 to Linfield is borderline match fixing. It was ridiculous. It was a scandal. But that's the Glimt fan inside me.
I also watched that game, and then to see the reverse fixture finish 8-0, that was the sort of vein I expected the other one to go down. And 1-0 loss for Glimt there is just
as a Rosenborg,
embarrassing.
As a Rosenborg fan, I'm more than happy for that to make this episode.
No, we've said it's not in the 5, so come on, give us one of the 5.
Number 5 on my list is Sam Rogers scoring a hat-trick. If I was asked for a Rosenborg player who was going to score a hat-trick against Yev this season, I'm not sure I'd have ever got around to saying Sam Rogers. He scored 5 goals in his previous 101 league appearances.
Yep.
And in this game, it was 3 corners, 3 goals, 22 points in fantasy as well, which was an interesting one at the time. It was just completely unforeseeable. So Sam Rogers for hat-trick comes in at 5 for me.
See, that's the duality of... See, that is the duality of Sam Rogers. That's just...
I was just about to say, if you ask Chris, that was the season peaked.
It's downhill from there.
And one of his goals was literally a tapping from about a yard as well in that game. I remember that from the corner. It was just in front of him and he just managed to put it in. But then the next game, I think... Did he play the next game? The next time that he played, I think he was awful. So he's just one of those players. I think it could be in the list Sam Rogers playing in the Eliteserien in one of the top 5 shocks. And I'm still a bit bitter in the sense of obviously Rekdal has brought Rogers to Rosenborg from HamKam, and I'm thinking you brought the wrong defender. You brought the wrong one. You should have brought Skjerovic. And I will say that until I'm blue in the face. And Tom knows that I bang on about Vettel all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I want him at Rosenborg. We'll do the swap. Yeah, you can have Skarsson and we'll have Skjerovic. It's fine.
Yeah, but I've already told you, Vettel's not going anywhere. He's out. So
yeah,
forget that.
I know. Yeah, but to me, he's left centre back. Brilliant player for that position. Sam Rogers, not so much. So yeah, getting a hat trick, just bizarre, just never going to happen again. It's ridiculous. And yeah, let's move on from that one because that's annoying me just thinking about it, to be honest.
Okay, I'll cheer you up a bit with my number 4 because that comes at a perfect time. My number 4 Eliteserien related shock of the season is Reindeer Hot Dog beats a Texai at fantasy football. I'm not happy about this one. Last year, I was admittedly awful. I had far too little time on my hands, far too many uni commitments. I scrapped it. Get my excuses out for that one early.
Have you seen how many
Season
hits?
before, I was
Have you
up
seen
there.
how many
I
hits I've
know.
taken?
It makes it more infuriating
Unlike
because that is
200
the complete opposite of my entire way I play the game.
So a few
And
weeks
you've
ago,
just wiped the floor with me.
So like a few weeks ago, I was 115th in the world, and I was like, I can get a double-digit figure here, right? And then everything's just gone to shit since then, and I've made a couple of bad decisions, and I've got zero luck in that time span as well, right? Now, obviously, everyone's got the same team, so it doesn't really matter so much when you make these decisions because it's basically damage limitation. You could lose you could lose out on a decision, but you're not really going to lose out too much on your rank or points because of the fact that it's very homogenized at the moment. The thing is, I'm looking at my team and I'm thinking I've taken 120 points in hits, maybe a little bit more.
Ridiculous.
And I'm thinking, is anybody around my rank taking anywhere near that amount of hits? I don't think anyone has, because I'm looking at these teams and it's like they've taken 8 points in hits, like across the entirety of the season, or 12 points, 60, maybe 20, maybe the odd 20, 24. And I'm like, yeah, I've taken 100 more. I've taken 100 more points in hits than all of you. So yeah, I mean, there was a point in
don't know what's happened.
There was a point in the season where I was like, right, I'm giving up with this shit. I can't be asked anymore.
You bounced back though.
But yeah, for next season, I'm like, right, I'm finishing top 20.
Yeah, it's even more. What makes it for me is the fact that we had in the middle of the season the women's Euros. Before that tournament, I'd never watched a game of international women's football in my life, and I did well in that.
Yeah, you just smashed the format. Yeah,
Eliteserien that I spent hours and hours every week taking in, talking about, recording. Absolutely nothing.
It's because football isn't played.
I don't know what's happened.
It's because football's not played behind the guise of a fantasy game. And the thing is, you're really, really limited in a format like this, where you basically get rewarded for goals, clean sheets, assists, and then imaginary bonus points. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much it. So, we're talking Molde-Yev, right? 1-1, ends 1-1. You ain't going to get any fancy points from that game. Whereas if we're looking at more and more metrics to actually monitor how well a player played in that game, you're probably going to get more points out of that game than you would just because, I had Ikram and he didn't score. But then if Ikram's actually done a lot in terms of statistical coverage, then you're going to get more points. So it is very, very limited, and that is the way that fantasy football is. So yeah, you do need the luck. And
overall, just infuriating.
Tommy's loving this chat. Tommy's loving this chat there, just resting on his hand, falling asleep. Love it as he eats his nuts. Right, I'm going to wake him up. And I'm going to talk about I've got 2 players in my top 5 shocks of the season. I'm going to start with the one that this is kind of linked to fantasy as well, I guess, because we always joke about him not really being an option in fantasy. Alexander Ruud-Tveta, his form this season. He's only gone 4 games without getting a direct goal involvement, so either a goal or assist. This is an Opta accredited assist, not a fantasy assist. So his longest run of games this season has been 4 without any direct goal involvement. He scored 8 goals, got 7 assists in 26 games. That is 0.58 returns every game played, or 0.62 per 90 minutes. He's only beaten that once in his career, and that was back in 2015-2016 season when he was first season at Halmstad in the Superettan, when he got 13 goals and 8 assists in 29 games. Since then, he's really struggled for goals. He's got the next season when he was up in the Allsvenskan, he got 1 goal and 2 assists. In the Orbosch, the next season at Sarpsborg, 2 goals, 5 assists. Then a few seasons in the Eliteserien where he's really struggled to score. He only scored 7 goals in 46 games in the next 3 years in the Eliteserien. So for him to get 8 goals and 7 assists, especially at this poor Sandford side, because they are poor, I'm sorry if Jacob or Quint, if you're listening, but you struggled this season, and there's a reason for that because the teams around are better, and that I have to say that, because that is what's happening. Struggled to score 38 goals. It's not too bad return in terms of goals. A lot of that has come from off Kier, but the fact that Alex has stood up and got 15 direct goal involvements in these games when it's just not been typical for him for his career of late, I think that's a shock. I wasn't expecting it, and he's looked good for it as well.
Yeah.
And the consistency throughout the season. It's not like, okay, he scored a hat trick at the start of the season, and we thought, oh, right, okay, I see what's happening here. He's going to get a hat trick here, then maybe 2 goals next week, and then not do anything for the rest of the season. Fact of the matter is, he has actually been returning on a really regular, consistent basis. And without him, they would be, I would hazard that they would be, well, if not 16th, then definitely 15th. They would be out of the quality right away. Like, they would be in the relegation places. So yeah, I think I certainly didn't see his performances coming this season. I think he's had a really good go of it, and let's not forget he's 31. So this is a weird time for him to be experiencing this kind of form. It's kind of Jamie Vardy-esque, but obviously, I'm not trying to patronise him. He has been at the top level of football in terms of Scandinavian football for a good while, like hit and miss the last few seasons in Eliteserien, and then 2016, 2017 in the Allsvenskan, but he's struggled at the top level to really make an impact. Whereas this season hasn't been the case. 15 goal returns in 26 games. I think that's a really phenomenal season for him, and a shock to me. I certainly didn't see it happening at all.
I got 2 things on that before we move on, because I was with Gutteprat in Follow 10 years ago.
I was going to ask about this. I was going to ask you about this. Yeah. I was going to ask about that.
And there's 2 things you need to know about him. Well, 3 things. One, really, really nice guy, really down to earth, fantastic trainer, brilliant. Number 2, ask any one of his teammates who's played with him, and they'll tell you how important he is. So even those times where he wasn't getting the goals and assists, he was someone that was always a focal point to play. He always worked hard, terrific left foot. But the third thing for me, which is the most surprising, is that he was always a confidence player. So for him to be able to do what he's doing this year in a team that's not really got that much confidence, particularly the last 12 games, for me, is even more surprising, because it shows then that he actually had a bit more confidence in himself and isn't then affected by everything else that's going on around him.
See, and the funny thing with him is as well, I've noticed that early on in his career, he's mainly used out on the left or as a second striker, like at Follow. That's where he started out as. Fredrikstad, similar sort of thing, used as a centre forward as well at times. Then in the 2012-2013 season in the Orbosch, he was used all over the shop in midfield, attacking midfield, second striker on each wing, centre forward, that sort of thing. Then he had a few seasons at centre forward when he got the most goals. He got 12 goals, 13 goals in four following his last season at Follow, and he got 12 goals, 3 assists when he was used as an out-and-out centre forward.
We played 3-5-2 that season to accommodate him. So
and then Sarpsborg, he's been used on both wings, didn't really get the best out of him for that. So I think a lot of it's revolving around the fact that when you're playing him in the right position, that's when you're going to get the returns from him, But the fact that he can be used across those other plays, I suppose, is a good thing.
I would argue with that his confidence probably had a lot to do with that, because if to play as the main number 9, especially if you're playing with a front 3, to play as your middle number 9, you've got to have the presence to occupy 2 defenders, and you've got to have the confidence that when you get your chance, you're going to take it, because there probably won't be that many. So I think the reason he was used out wide more was because he didn't have that at that time. Now he has that, and now he has, Sandefjord's whole front 3 is set up by the fact that he drops and occupies the central defenders, and then off Kieran as currently as Vega, but it was Daddy's boy or whatever you want, part of his name you want to use, uses their pace to get in behind him then from the space that's created. So I think as well, he knows his own role a bit better and has been able to put it in a way that he can occupy it. So
and I think a lot of
good guy.
And I think a lot of people might be listening to this and be thinking, well, he scored 6 goals and got 3 assists last season. The thing is, Sandefjord finished 10th, and they were well out. They were well out of the quality. They finished on 36 points and Braun, who went down in the qualifying, finished on 26 points. So as we've said, this isn't the same Sandford team in terms of their performance this season. He scored these goals when they haven't really been winning the games and drawing the games that they relied on last season to be well out of the relegation places. So I think for him to do it this season when they're struggling so much really says a lot about his character. And it's just one of those weird ones where this is his age, what he's like 31, and he's sort of like in some of the best form of his career. And for a team that's struggling to stay up, it just doesn't seem a very, very likely story. So yeah, I think it's been a really good season for him, and I hope he gets the credit he deserves for that. Because yeah, he absolutely does deserve a lot of recognition for his performance this season.
I'll take one more individual then, since we're on the topic of individuals.
Yep.
Jeftovic Odd. This is a guy who, I don't have the numbers, but this is a guy whose seasons and history in terms of football has been labelled consistently with the word inconsistently, where he would go through purple patches and lots of contributions and then would do absolutely nothing. And as well has always been known as having really good qualities going forward, but defensively not really being the best to help the team, which I think has then impacted his trust in starting games and affecting games. This year, I'm pretty sure he's got at least 12 or 13 goals. And I think he's got probably 5 or 6 assists in that as well. But if you watch him play now in that Odd team, he is 100% invested in the team, 100% invested in everything that's going on. He knows his role. They've given him a role that utilizes most of his offensive qualities best. But for me, he's been a real surprise at his consistency, because I looked at that, knowing Paco like I do, he's very everything's very black and white with him, and the system is there's flexibility, but you have to buy into it, and you have to be willing to do what you've been asked to do. He doesn't carry the enigmas, he doesn't carry the luxury players. It is a team, it is a squad. So for Jeftovic to have bought into that and now getting the rewards, I think is been a big surprise, because Odd haven't really scored that many goals this year as a team. So it was a case of, if he wasn't going to score the goals, then who exactly was going to score the goals? And even more so since Kitolano and Laurenson left in the summer.
Yeah, he's a good player to rely on in those games where they need a goal when they're looking in short supply. And he's scored 4 out of 4 penalty goals this season as well in the league. So
I'm pretty sure three of those were against us as well.
I don't have that to hand, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, we gave away
mentioned the
three
fact that,
penalties.
like,
We gave away 3 penalties against Odd in the 4 goals we conceded against them. So I'm pretty sure that 75% of those is against Hagen in goal.
What was his reputation early on in his career? Because obviously he was at Rosenborg in 2017. 2017. He scored 9 goals, got 2 assists in 25 games. Was he seen as somebody that could really kick on and sort of take off from there? It just hasn't really happened, or was it just seen as like a happy surprise that he came in, did all right, and then sort of moved on?
Well, if you take it back again, in 2016, he was in Glimt on loan. That's where he got his move to Rosenborg from. And Glimt at that time played 4-3-3 counter-attacking football, and that's where they saw him as being a weapon, because he could just sort of sit there and then as soon as the ball breaks, just run as quick as he could forwards and use his trickery there and be quite direct. And when you play in that kind of way, then you can afford to a point to have wingers that don't do all of the tracking back, because you need them to be ready for when you're counter-attacking forwards. I would argue to a point that Ofkir in that Sandefjord team is a little bit the same.
Yeah.
I think his reputation firstly was that. I also think his reputation was a little bit that he struggled in established play. So he struggled when the team he was on had a lot of the ball. I can't remember exactly, but I think his goal returns with Rosenborg started quite well, but then drifted as the season went on, because I think teams got a bit wise to him. And obviously in a club like Rosenborg, where most teams are going to sit in and defend against. At that time, they were reigning champions. Then it meant that he didn't get the space he needed because Rosenborg are going to be a counter-attacking team.
In the last 10 games of that season, he only scored once.
Yeah. So I think for odds, they want the ball. They want a lot of ball. They have some elements of counter-attacking in them, but they want the ball. They want to dominate with the ball, and they have a very clear plan of what to do with the ball. So for him to return as many goals as he has then with that, I think has been probably the biggest surprise, at least out of that odd team.
Yeah.
Yeah. And to your point before, Tom, like of who else was going to score the goals this season, besides Jevtovic at odd this season, their top scorer is Gengar.
With 4,
outright
right?
as well. With 4, yeah. Nobody else has more than 3.
So I'm just going to quickly interject on that Gengar point. I'm going to quickly interject on this Gengar point. There's no one that's more infuriating than him. We're either looking at somebody who is like absolutely incredible, 18-year-old enigma that's going to take this league by storm and move on to bigger, better, amazing, wonderful things, or he's just an anomaly in the space-time, continuum, whatever it is. He's had 6 shots in 7 games, all of them on target, scored 4 goals, 66.67 conversion rate, and I think he's probably touched the ball about 20 times or something stupid, where has that come from? That's absolutely mad. Absolutely
I
mad.
don't know where that's come from, but I would argue that there is one common denominator. Actually, not, because the goal against Vålerenga was a little bit unlike that. But his first 3 goals were all counter-attack goals, and Odd has been very clear that they like to use him in games that they're going to defend more because of his pace.
Yeah.
So they use him as one of the wingers then to allow him then to counter into space. And the 2 goals he scores against Sandefjord are clean, classic counter-attacking goals of that type.
But to score 4 goals from 6 shots is just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's Haaland numbers. But the reality is that he's going to have to next season. He's going to have to learn to play a different way because teams will be aware of that.
Yeah.
And at 18 years old, that is part of your development, that you have a weapon, you learn how to use it against opponents. Then opponents get wise to said weapon, so you have to find a different way.
Yeah, definitely. Anyone else got another top 5 shock? What we're looking at? I've forgotten who said what so far. So
I said Jetovic last, so I've got 3 left.
Yes, same. I'll go to 3rd on my list. A spot I've reserved for Christensen, but it could be one of 2 things depending on how this season ends. So as time of recording with it looking like we're going down, it's just Christensen's inability to defend this season. Since promotion in 2016, average conceded per season, 43.8. Finished anywhere between 5th and 7th in each of those 5 seasons. And on current trend, will concede 63.3 this season. 19.5 over the average over the last 5 seasons. Where on earth has that come from? Especially at the start of this season.
Ulvestar.
Yeah.
Is where that's
big factor. Big factor.
Because I'm pretty sure this is the season he's played the least amount of games. And his statistics, I don't know it officially, but his statistics of minutes on the pitch and number of points Christensen have gained is very much weighted for when he's on the pitch, they get points. When he's not on the pitch, they don't get points. The little asterisk I put on that Glimt game for the weekend is there's been a lot of talk that he's got a cracked rib. I'm pretty sure he's got a cracked rib. I don't think if it'd been any other scenario other than they were fighting for their lives, he would have played that Glimt game. But I think they've done some witchcraft / put a little injection in and got him through the game.
Yeah. I mean, all of my entries on this list come in the order they do because of them happening, their likelihood relative to my expectation at a given point in the season. And to look at more recently, the fact that him being in and out, it makes it somewhat more predictable what's going to happen in a Christensen game. But at the start of the season, if you'd told me that Christensen would spend the majority of the season 16th, now 15th, going down, conceding almost 20 goals, more than their average over the last 5 seasons, I'd have said you're talking a load of rubbish. The amount of times recently I've been listening through to some of our earlier episodes and I was talking about Christensen reliability. Wow, just top tier defensive team. Not to win in the first 14 after saying that is absolutely embarrassing, both for me having said it and for them having done it. So yeah.
So do you remember when Pellegrino moved away from Christensen and I said to you, you are screwed now because no one's going to score your goals. I said to you, as soon as he moved, I was like,
You weren't wrong.
you are done. You are done. Who's scoring your goals? You don't have another goal
See-
scorer. When Pellegrino was there, he scored 25 goals, got 6 assists in 29 games in the Eliteserien, right?
Yeah.
You finished 5th, yeah, 57 goals. So
Yeah.
25 of them came from Pellegrino and he set up another 6. Like,
Well, that's a
you had
big
no
part
other
of
player in the
why-
team that was doing anything.
That's a big part of why I specified the entry as the inability to defend, because I do agree that we were never scoring many this season. I just didn't see it going this far downhill. But I did say the spot was reserved for Christensen. And if we do stay up, I'll scrap all of that and I'll make that the entry. Christensen staying up after not winning in the first 14.
Wow.
15.
Yeah.
15.
15.
Yeah, unfortunately, the
Oh, I
16th
can't
game
count.
was the 16th game was unfortunately their first win against the certain team from Hamar.
We won't talk too much about that one.
He's now doing the maths.
Oh yeah, no, yeah. I was just looking. Yeah, it's well,
It was
I've got
round
it.
16.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
round 16, but they played 14 games before that game. It was
Yeah.
14. Yeah. So on the 15th game, they won the first game of the season
Yeah.
against you. Yeah.
I go by
Against you.
round numbers because unlike most teams this season, Hamcam have actually played all the games when they should have done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
You're the
their fault.
reliable outfit in the league. Everyone else is
exactly.
ridiculous. Yeah. Everyone else is
We're just
ridiculous.
chaotic.
Yeah. Exactly. But yeah, I think
Right.
if Christensen do stay up, then that's a great escape that they've, seen out to the very end. But if they go down, then yeah, they really shouldn't have been relegated this season when you look at the other teams in the league that have struggled. I mean, but yeah, to win just 4 times, to win the fewest number of games out of anybody this season is embarrassing for a team like Christensen.
Statistically, just to throw it out there,
30
Christensen should have the
goals.
same. Christensen should have the same or very similar amount of points as us, Orlison, and Odd,
Yeah.
and Gutsa actually for that matter.
18 though, to actually get that. Jesus.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's mad.
Awful.
Anyway, moving on. Let's go the other way.
Yep.
Tromsø,
Yes.
surprise of the season.
I thought you might mention them. Yeah.
For the reason being that actually 2 reasons. Number one, they were in a very similar spot to us after 9 or 10 games where they were not winning many games, they were not losing many games, but they were having an awful, quite big amount of draws.
Mm.
And there was discussion in Tromsø of the coach Gauter. Should he stay? Should he go? Is he right for Tromsø? Is he not right for Tromsø? He then signed a new deal that keeps him until the end of 24, I think it is. And then for them then to not only pick up the points they've done, but do it in a way that is quite a expansive brand of football and is not an easy way to play, and be able to have the confidence to do it when you are on a knife edge. Because a lot of teams would have said, just shut up shop. And you see a lot of teams now. I know Hamcam have done it for a lot of the season, but you see teams like Gutsa now have started to do it more. Viking are starting to do it more. Those sorts of teams have shut up shop. For Tromsø then to be able to do it in such a way where they can play their open, expansive style, still be difficult to score against because they have so much of the ball, and then have Kitolano, Mikkelsen drifting and creating the overloads, and have really not even a proper striker scoring goals. Like the strikers they've had this year haven't really contributed a lot to the goal tally. So I think for me, it's a brilliant thing. It's a massive surprise, but I do think the big question, which everyone can see about to happen, is there's no way this Tromsø team is staying together for next year.
No, not a chance.
Mikkelsen's gonna go. They have to sell him. They need the money. Kitolano is starting to score goals now, and he's got 6 months left of his contract. And he's toying with the club, saying, we'll see after the season if I'm going to sign or not going to sign. I can't see him signing another deal. He's going to want to go abroad and those sorts of things. And then it's a case of, where do you find the replacements? Like, it's not exactly easy to find players with very little money that fit into the way that Tromsø want to play.
Yeah, to find another Mikkelsen for cheaper than they're going to sell him for is not an easy task by any means. To be fair, I don't think it would be ridiculous to suggest that they could do a bit of a Christensen next season if they'd fail to replace some of those players.
Yeah. Although I think the fact that Gauser's had 2 years there now, I don't think they will completely drop. But I do think next year's Eliteserien is going to be far more difficult than this year's Eliteserien if you look at teams
surely,
down compared to teams up.
like, they can't get rid of both Kitolano and Mikkelsen, surely. One of
Well,
them
they
has
don't
to
have
stay.
No, they haven't got a choice because Mikkelsen, they need the money and he's the biggest crown jewel they
He's
have.
surely gone. Yeah, he's surely gone.
Yeah. And Kitolano's only got 6 months on his deal
Right,
his
yeah.
contract expires in the summer. So you might keep him till the summer, but
then you're getting nothing for him.
Then you get nothing for him. And that's a
Mm.
really bad time to lose a player of that quality because you then got to not only replace him, but you got to replace him and integrate him into what is a quite difficult way of playing.
Yeah, and I think Nordus just hasn't really. I think he's going to come under some criticism because of his lack of involvement in obviously goals and assists and stuff. But I do think that he works his arse off. I think the games that
Yeah.
I've seen Tromsø play, I've been impressed with him, off the ball and, doing a lot as a big centre forward should be doing physically. But there'll obviously be some talk about him not doing what they really wanted. Because the thing is, I think with Mikkelsen, you've got a get out of jail free card. The fact of the
Yeah.
matter is, other players can, not play so well. He's going to pick up the slack. He's going to score. He's going to score from 20 yards. He's going to score a 6-yard tapping. He's going to take free kicks and he'll score wonder goals. He, buoys the rest of the team. He's a talisman, and he's what? How old is he? Like 19, 20, 21? I've forgotten his age. But
Who's that? Mikkelsen? He's
Yeah.
2000, so he's 22.
22, right? Okay, so he's a young player, but he's playing with the seniority of of one of the top teams of one of the top players in the league. So yeah, to have his influence gone stripped from the team is going to have a negative impact on the rest of the team, and I think they'll be shown up for not being on the same level as him. That is not in any way, shape, or form trying to take away from what Tromsø have done this season. I'm not saying it's all down to Mikkelsen, but I think it's the Pellegrino effect that we're seeing. I think without him, they wouldn't be where they are. Despite, they are a really well-oiled, good, efficient team. They've drawn 11 games, which is only 2 fewer than yourself. So again, you don't really go up there thinking, "Oh, we're going to win this game," and and in turn, they're not really the kind of team that are going to turn around and win 3-4-5-0. They're usually close enough games. But yeah, I think the issue with Tromsø is they are a few signings. Well, they are a few players leaving away from potentially free falling down the league next season. And I think this is where the recruitment model comes in, and they're going to have to do it really well. And to me, I like to check in on the Orbos quite a bit, but there's a decent array of talent in that league that they could surely go for. But then again, I don't know what Tromsø's financial situation is like.
Well, the answer to
yeah.
the second question is not great, but the answer to the first question, they've already signed Vegard Arlin from Ronheim, and he is a very similar type of player to Mikkelsen and Kitolano. He's that type that will drop in around, likes to go in the little half spaces. He's tricky.
Okay.
And he has scored 14 goals for Ronheim. The only
Yeah.
question mark with him is this is the most amount of minutes he's played in a season for many,
Right.
many years because he's had a lot of injuries.
Yeah,
So that's going to be very dependent on whether he can stay fit. But
sure.
that was a smart signing by them, and that would suggest that they know what they are looking for, and they're already underway in trying to find what they need.
Yeah. I'm going to jump onto one of mine as well now. Another one. We mentioned Viking earlier. I'm just going to say they had such a strong start to the season, right? In their first 10 games, they took 21 points and lost only once away to Odd 2-1. And these games included a 2-0 win against Glimt, 4-3 away win at Molde. They were really good. They looked awesome. And since then, we are looking at the fact that they could finish well, they could technically finish as low as 13th still, depending on how well HamKam do and how poorly Viking do. But they're 10th now. They're below Ålesund. And what, they've got Molde next, so they're probably going to lose that game. Yeah, they could realistically finish 12th. I think they could easily finish 12th this season. And the fact of the matter is, I was bigging them up as being like title contenders earlier on in the season. I thought this form, bloody hell, they're beating Glimt and Molde in the first portion of the season. Yeah, this team is the one to beat. I think obviously the elephant in the room everyone's going to be shouting at is Berisha. He left. Obviously, then it was all downhill from there. Whatever. Yeah, I agree. Absolutely agree. But also Joe Bell. I think they've really missed Bell in the middle of that midfield. But the funny thing is, Marcus Solbakken has come in and he's hardly put a foot wrong.
Yeah.
Especially when they were on form, he was one of the better players. He just was.
Yeah.
I don't know what's happened. Is it just the collective attitude of the players at the club? I mean, Gunnarsson has got a screw loose, just the way that he's approached some of these games this season, I just don't understand it. Trying to resize the goals in that game, and then what did he headbutt one of his own players as well, or something stupid like that? His attitude hasn't helped throughout the course of the season. But I don't know what it is. But the fact of the matter is, they've lost 11 games. They've struggled for consistency. They're on a really poor run of form. If we just get my form table up now, I can actually tell you.
They've won one of the last 11, I think it is.
Yeah, one of the last 11, and they've taken 6 points out of the last 33. So, that is relegation form.
Yeah.
And I know that they've lost a couple of players and they've struggled to, build the squad in the way that I'd want to, but their squad isn't bad. It's not that bad. I don't know what's gone on there. I mean, from your perspective, Tom, what do you make of that? Because I think that's a huge shock. I was not expecting that to happen.
I mean, yeah, I agree with all that you said. I think that the Joe Bell leaving was a massive one. I put it down to, and I don't know. I know Morten Jensen, one of the head coaches, well. I did my A-license with him, and I know one of the assistants as well. I see it as two things. Number one, I think Berisha was the main. He was the culture setter in that changing room. And I think that as much as you've got Lundberg and Trippic that do it as well, I think that Trippic does it by the way he performs. I think Lundberg does it by the way he runs around, and he's vocal. He's a very terrific guy. But I think Berisha did both. And I think when you have someone of that level that's so much better than the rest of the group and affects everyone in the same way, when you lose that, then I think they underestimated the impact that would have. And I think the second part to it is I think they tried to play a way that they didn't have the players to do from the summer. So I think at the start of the year and the end of last year, when you had Bell in the team, Berisha in the team, Trippic in the team, Solution, who went to Brøndby in the team, Fridtjofsen in the team, they had all these players that suited the way they wanted to play, and it all fitted like a glove. Solbakken, 100% agree. I think he's been a very good player for them. There's a lot of question marks asked about him before the season. Particularly, he was bought from a relegated Stabæk team, but he doesn't win the ball as much as Joe Bell did.
Yeah,
Solbakken is brilliant when your team has a lot of the ball. When you're defending low and want games to be a bit closer, he's not that type of player. They signed Svensson to replace Berisha. He's not that type of player. They signed this Finnish midfielder who I still think is a very good player. I know I put him as my top 5 signing, one of my top 5 signings, but he's not Fridtjofsen. And then I don't really think they've replaced Seb Olausen well enough. So I think what they've been left with then is a disjointed team and a coaching staff then that have been trying to find a way to get all the things to function. Midway through a season where you are having to deal with a lot of things at the same time. Not forgetting that Stavanger as a place is an extremely harsh place from a footballing perspective.
Yeah.
You can compare it to Trondheim and Rosenborg. You know that there is a huge expectation in Stavanger, and there was a huge expectation built in Stavanger after the end of last year that this was going to be the year that Viking came back and went for a medal.
See,
so that's
I think you've hit
from
the
the
nail on the head
outside.
with Frid Johnson as well. The last game that Frid Johnson played for Viking in the league was the 4-2 away loss at Vålerenga. Since then, they've won once. So I think he's been a huge miss. Because obviously he's at who's he at now? Atromitos Athens. So he moved to the Greek Super League. So yeah, I mean, yeah, the form sort of already started to tail off already before that point. But before the Vålerenga game, they were unbeaten in 3, drew 1 with us, and then won the next 2 against Lillestrøm and Kristiansund. Then they lost in his last game, Vålerenga, and then since then, the only game that they've won. Well,
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
but yeah, so I think he's been a huge miss. They've just lost these good players at the wrong points of their season, and it's screwing them up. But still, I still don't think it's enough to justify or explain why they are where they are. So I don't know whether it's just a mental, like erosion throughout the team that's being felt because of those players leaving, or what. But like you look at that, there's a little group of 3 games that they lost in a row: 3-2 away at Goodser, 2-1 against Sandfjord at home, and then 4-2 away at Haugesund. But then they drew with us and then won 2 games in a row. So it's not like they.
By the way, we're an independent podcast, so you have to stop saying us and start saying Rosenborg.
Sorry, Rosenborg. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, they drew 1-0 with Rosenborg, and then obviously, since then they did win those 2 games. But then, on his last game they lost, and since then it's just been absolutely downhill from there. So
which goes into my top 5 surprises. How many teams this year have had a better first half of the season to the second half of the season? If you were to pause the table at around 18, let's say, when the transfer window closed, you would look at that and you would say that Viking have collapsed to a point.
Mm-hmm.
Ålesund have collapsed to a point. Sarpsborg had a period where they collapsed and now have rescued it. Sandefjord have collapsed. I've had not many points to start with, but you would argue have collapsed. So there's been a lot of teams this year that have had a very, very good first half of the season.
Yeah.
And you go, oh, they could be looking to surprise. And then either the loss of a player or something has happened. And all of a sudden they are scrapping for, either staying in the league or in the same. So you talk about Viking, their form is relegation form.
Yeah.
The reality is if you were to take Kristiansun's second half of the season, they're probably 7th or 8th in the table just for that part of the season.
Yeah.
If you take Gutter's form, Viking's form, Ålesund's form, if you take those clubs' form, they're probably bottom 5.
Yeah.
So I think one of the surprising things for me, and actually these are actually my last 2, but they kind of link together, is that how many teams have collapsed the second half of the season. Yes, you can turn it the other way and say Vålerenga have had a fantastic second half of the season. Kristiansund had a fantastic second half of the season. So there are teams that have the other way. But the other surprising thing, and this is my last one, every coach that started the season as a head coach is still in their job. There has not been one sacking or change of head coach in the Eliteserien all year.
Wow.
The first time in 12 years in Norway that's happened. And that surprises me when you then look at the point that I just made about in terms of runs of form.
Yeah.
Because you could argue Mikkelsen, I know there was a lot of pressure. I thought he dealt with it brilliantly, considering I thought it was a bit unfair at times. But he is Mr. Christensen. He's done enough to deserve the chance to turn it around and lead them back up if that's what he wants to do. But Fargo was under pressure at one point. The Goodser coach has been under pressure at one point. Glimt's trainer, Chetter, was never really under pressure at any point. Lars Nielsen's now under a bit of pressure. The Viking coach is now under a bit of pressure. You know, there's been times where coaches have been under pressure, but no one's actually lost their job.
I mean,
Wow.
the fact that you mentioned about Mikkelsen at Christensen, yeah, I mean, 2 points in the first 14 games? It would not have been surprising to have seen him be sacked.
No.
Yeah, you wouldn't have batted an eye at that. You would have thought, okay, well, fair enough, whatever. But he's been given the chance to turn it around, and my God, he's not. It's not done and dusted yet. I still think it's a long shot for them to stay up. But yeah, you look at that form, bloody hell.
Sonderfield haven't won in 13 games, but they gave their coaches two-year extensions not so long ago.
Yeah,
ambition.
Yeah, but I don't know. I'm not here to comment on why.
Yeah, no, exactly.
There are many reasons why. There'll be surely some financial reasons for it. But I expected with the new TV deal coming next year, and so many people chasing for Eliteserien survival and making sure that they were in the Eliteserien next year and were then proprietors of this new deal. I expected there to be more desperation than there has been.
Yeah, definitely.
Completely fair, yeah.
James, what about your list? How far down have you got? A couple more to go?
I've got 2 more to go. Yeah, I'll go on to my number 2. Overperformance, or someone I didn't expect to step up in the way they have. We've already mentioned the fact that Christensen have really lacked a goal scorer this season. I did not think that Faris and Bamya Pemi would step up to this call for a goal scorer. Last season, played 521 minutes, didn't score a goal. In his previous 1,500 Eliteserien minutes, he scored just 4 goals. Spent the first half of the season on loan in the Danish division, played 10 games, didn't score. When he came back from loan, I was thinking this is really a clutching at straws here. This is desperate times.
Scraping the bottom of the barrel.
Genuinely, I did not see a chance of that coming to anything. I thought he'd get a couple games, sit on the bench the rest of the time, provide very little, then scores 5 goals in 4 games. I would not have believed anyone who had told me he was capable of that. Maybe that's because I haven't seen enough of him in the past. Maybe that is because he's just really, really stepped up his game. But Christensen needed a striker, and he did fill that void at a period of time that it was very, very crucial to do so. And should we stay up, that's absolutely huge. Like, he has been a big part of
Christensen. Look, you're doing it now as well. It's not we, it's Christensen. We are an independent podcast. This is not a Hamcam Christensen and Rosenborg podcast.
Yes, but regardless, I really do see that was not. I just didn't foresee that coming to fruition whatsoever. So spectacular that actually made such a big turning point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, that time when he was playing on form, what we're talking 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games, he played quite well, and he got a return in 5 of them, including a brace against Viking when they won 2-1.
Yeah,
and he scored a couple of penalties as well. So yeah, I really thought, okay, they've gone back to him because they have no other options. It has actually played out quite well for them, and he's looked good. Like, he looked good against Glimt as well.
He could have had a couple.
He was quite a physical. He was quite physical in that game and was a nuisance. And I thought he was, by his performance, thinking, okay, he's going to score 1 or 2 in this game. And I think on another day he would have done. So yeah, I mean, I certainly wouldn't have been sitting there thinking, oh yeah, this is a great side and he's going to come in and score. But yeah, I think he's surprised probably a few people with his performances.
Yeah, hugely
this season.
How many have you got left on your list?
Right, so I've got a couple. I'm going to go through mine quite quickly here.
Go on.
I'm going to say, right, similar to Viking, I've said about Sarpsborg as well. I had Sarpsborg down as a team I thought would be pushing for a top 6, maybe even higher. It's still a possibility. They are just 2 points off 6th and 6 points off 5th. Their awful run over 10 games is one of the biggest shocks of the season for me. 3 points from 30. They lost 8 games in a row. But then
Don't finish that sentence. Do not finish that sentence.
It's fine.
I know every time someone mentions the Sarpsborg run, I know where that sentence is going to end.
I haven't got that down. Don't worry. I haven't got that in my list. Don't worry. It's fine.
Carry on.
Obviously, nobody saw that coming. But they're unbeaten in their last 7, winning 5 and drawing 2. They've claimed 17 out of 21 points after claiming just 3 from 30. I don't know what's gone on here. They started off quite well, then they went poor, then they've gone back to being brilliant again. I think Anders Christiansen injury had something to do with it to some degree. I think we can't underestimate how much of a presence he is in that team. He knows what he's doing. In my opinion, he's one of the most accomplished goalkeepers we have in the league. He's a fantastic player to have. Obviously, Simon Nilsson didn't play poorly when he came in, but I think that didn't help anything at all. But even still, to take just 3 points from that run in between, Runde 11 and 20. And to be fair, HamKam did kick off that run of poor form for Sarpsborg, winning 3-2 in Hamar. Sorry, we did. We're an independent podcast, Tom.
No, I said that was I said that. But yeah,
you've been waiting to do that, haven't you?
Yeah.
But I will add on one little exception to that is I am paid by HamKam, therefore it is we.
Okay.
I have to go around wearing a HamKam uniform.
Okay, I'll let you
my
off.
actual work clothes.
Yeah, I'll let you off. But yeah, like the only team that they beat in that poor run was Sandfjord, and that was 4-3 at home. So like it wasn't even like they won that game
with 10 men as well.
Yeah, but then they lost 4-1 away to Glimt, 1-0 at home to Enger. Some not particularly easy games in there. Like they did play Glimt twice in that run, and they were away to Molde. They also had Lillestrøm and Vålerenga, but surely they're capable of getting a draw in some of those games, not just flat out losing them all and then losing 8 in a row. So yeah, for me, I didn't see that happening. I thought, wow, these guys are going to be thrust into the relegation battle if they're not too careful. But then since then, winning 5 and drawing 2, 17 out of 21 points. Where the hell has that come from? Where did the poor run come from anyway? I think it shows a lot of resilience in the Sarpsborg team behind closed doors. I think they're really a close together unit. I think Billborn, knows what he's doing with that team. There's always a risk reward set up with that team. They like to go and score goals. They've made that very clear from the start of the season. That's what he wants to do. He's prioritizing scoring goals more than anything. So yeah, it's perhaps a bit of a shock to see them score just 2, 3, 4, 5 goals in those 8 games as well. Like it wasn't even like they were trying to score loads of goals and they were losing like 4-2 or something. It was just they were just being blown out of the water in those games. But I think really hats off to them. Credit where credit's due. They've turned that around and now they're like one of the informed teams in the league, and they look good for it. Whether that remains, whether or not they carry on with that next season without Heinz, is Selectro's going to stay? That's another story. But I think Julian Goalie's been a fantastic player for them. I think Martin Hoyland can, come in and play a pivotal role next season as well. I think he's been a great player to just have when you need him. Hasn't really played that much, but I think he's a really good player. They have decent players there, and let's not forget as well they've been without Thomason for the majority of the season as well, injured, and he is one of their better players. Really big personality in terms of his presence on the pitch as well. So I think they have been screwed over a little bit with injuries and stuff, but still, I think that was a really, really shocking run of form. I can't see too many people thinking, oh, that was expected, or they weren't too surprised by that. Like to me, I thought, this is the season where they can really make a push for 5th, 6th. So to have that run of form was a bit of a shock to me.
Shall I finish off with my number 1?
Yeah.
Something that from the start of the season, if you told me was going to happen at this point, I would have called you crazy. I've got a few quotes from our early season stuff to sort of summarize this up. So my Eliteserien preview predictions this season, my statement about Viking was goal Veton Berisha, assist Niklas Sandberg. Expect a lot of that. our round 1 review. This is a quote from you, Chris. I've been pulling my hair out what I've got left of it. I really don't know how Cabran has started ahead of Sandberg in that game. Absolutely bizarre. Sandberg's been brought in. He's the main man on the right wing of that attack. I don't understand it. The next week, another quote from you. I thought, keep Sandberg for that Orleton game. He should start. They'll bring him in. Let's get some goals. Let's win the game on the bench. On the bench. Brilliant. Again, no real reason. And I replied with, Sandberg benching is absurd. Who bloody knew? And I think who bloody knew sums this entry up completely. Because start of this season, he was all we talked about when it came to Viking. Him and Berisha. Assists galore, creation galore. In the last 3 consecutive seasons, literally, last 3 consecutive seasons, he's had 11 direct goal involvements in all of them. This is his first season now at what we expected to be a top club this year. He's got just 5 goal involvements. He's played just 43.1% of available minutes. And I think it's fair to say, more than it is about any transfer, that it's been a flop.
Yeah, and I don't understand it. I think he's a great player. I think he's brilliant. At Haugesund, it was like a free kick. Oh, but it's a goal then. Simple as that. Haugesund has scored. Oh, so he's involved then. You know,
it's the fact that
I just don't get why he's not been starting for Viking. You know, I don't get why all of a sudden Cabran has been favoured to him. And I'm not saying that Cabran has been poor this season. I don't think he's been as good as we thought he can be. I don't think he's been a particularly brilliant player this season. But I don't understand why he had been given the nod so many times ahead of Sandberg, especially when they went out and bought Sandberg and brought him in to basically, I thought it'd be a case of you'd have Trippier on the left, Sandberg on the right, Berisha up top.
Yeah.
That's the way it's going to be. That's what we thought. What the hell has happened?
And it's got to the point where we're barely even talking about it anymore. Like, when was the last time we talked about Nicholas Sandberg? We're not still sat here going, why aren't they playing him? This is the first time we've talked about him in a long time because it's just become normal, which the fact that we're 27 weeks into the season and he's not performed in the way anywhere near that we expected him to, and it's still completely inexplicable.
He's just not been given the chance.
It's crazy. I just never believed it. So for me, that's number 1. Biggest shock of the season. Sandberg's flopped at Viking. Don't know how.
Can you understand that, Tom? Like, can you give us any insight on that move and why that hasn't worked out the way we thought it would?
I don't know the move, so I can't argue. Because again, as you say, and on the face of it, when you look at his season last year, it's a perfect signing for a club like Viking who are going on the way up.
Slotted in beautifully.
The only thing I can say, and this is not my research, this is from Jonas Gunnar, who is one of the football experts for Discovery, who have the rights for the Eliteserien. Viking have had 27 lineups, played 27 games. Not one of those lineups has had the same 11 across the entire season. Point 1. Point 2, of those 27 lineups, they've played 3 different systems. Point 3.
Yeah.
And point 4 is, on average, they make 2.6 changes per game. That doesn't suggest exactly, we talked about the problems Viking have had, but it doesn't suggest that suits Sandberg that well, that the team changes system in and out, because he is a very proper winger type who, in a 4-3-3, suits perfectly as Viking played. When they've then switched to a 5-3-2, is he a wing back? Is he not a wing back? Not sure. But that's the only thing I can think of. And I would be surprised if he's still there next year in the same role.
Yeah.
And I would not be surprised if Haugesund tried to get him back.
Yeah. I could see that going very well for them, especially, and him. Suits everyone.
Yeah. I've actually got, to end my list, I've got another player. And this is, you've all been waiting for it. It's come, don't worry. We're mentioning Rosenborg. Yeah. Just for Tom. But I think this is really, really justified mentioning this. Serta's form this season, it's insane. It is actually ridiculous. Now, I don't know too much about his earlier career because it's very, very hard to find out too much about his earlier career online without, I imagine Scout maybe has something on it. But in 2018, 2019, he played for Nardo, or Nardo, however you pronounce it. 20 games, 7 goals. That was it across 1,336 minutes in the league. Not a bad return, but that's obviously, not the highest level of football. And he was what, 22, 23 at the time. So it's not like he was 17, 18, a youngster. He was, 22, 23, getting to the point where he's going to start kicking on in the next couple of seasons. Then at Runheim, in the 2020 season, centre forward role, as usual, 19 games, 8 goals, 2 assists, in about just over nine games and 90 minutes. So decent return. More than 1 goal or an assist per 90 minutes. And then at Nardo, it was just under 0.5 per 90. Then barely played at Ulunsukur Kisa in the Obos as well. 6 games, 1 assist. And then he's just come back to Rosenborg from that. And 18 games, 14 goals, 7 assists, 1.17 goal or assist per game played, 1.48 goal or assist per 90 minutes. Where the hell has that come from? Did anybody genuinely see that happening? Like,
No.
do you know what I mean?
No.
To me, that is the biggest shock of the season. I think it's insane that he's going to finish potentially second top goal scorer behind Pellegrino. That is madness. That is absolute madness.
There was a lot of eyebrows when he was signed from Ronheim to Rosenborg. Like, why on earth are Rosenborg signing him? Like, he's not. Apart from the fact that at that time Rosenborg didn't have many local players, and you could argue they were trying to fill a quota and things like that. But there was never a thought that he was going to be one of Rosenborg's main strikers. But I do think that the change to Rekdal's 3-5-2 is probably one of the best things that could have happened for him, because I could never see him playing as a lone man in a 4-3-3 up top. But as a 2 where you can work off someone and have that partnership with someone, I think it's been something that's brought out the best in him. And is it a one season wonder? Is it a purple patch? Is it
maybe
fulfilling his potential? We don't know. We'll find that out next year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that gives me encouragement is, well, if he's going to still be at Rosenborg, that's another story for another time. You look at his time in Runheim, and he, 1.1 goal or assist per 90 minutes there. So, it's not like it's his only time in his career where he's had a really good rate of return. He has done that before, but obviously we bought him and he went out on loan, didn't really play much. And yet he's been involved in 18 games this season for Rosenborg. And Tengstedt coming into the team has obviously helped. Great. He's a great player. I could talk about Tengstedt to the blue in the face. He's a great foil. He's a great focal point. He just loves a 3-5-2. He actually said in his interview when he joined Rosenborg, he's built for a 3-5-2. This is how he plays football. And he just absolutely clicked from the first game with Serta beautifully. And we're like, okay, this is a great partnership. But still, I think Serta's done a lot of it on its own as well. And it's not been without its trials and tribulations this season as well. We've seen Serta react poorly at times. When he went off and knocked over the hand sanitizer stand, I thought he was going to be dropped by Rekdal, but they dealt with it in-house wonderfully, actually. Like, they came out and said, no. It's all been talked about. Don't worry about it. You don't need to make a big story out of it. It's done. It's dusted. We move on. And then he just picked up and kicked off from that point on. And I think that was a big turning point in his season as well. It showed the maturity that we thought maybe he doesn't have. And obviously we're not going to talk too much about it because I know it's a touchy subject and I'm not sure I'm too qualified to talk too much about it. But the whole issue with, his agent, I'm not going to, really talk about this too much, but his agent and his potential contract issues, and is he going to be at Rosenborg? I personally think the fact of the matter is he's had a fantastic season. He deserves to at least be able to represent himself in a way that gives him the best chance to get the best deal going forward for his career. Let's face it, right? He's 26. It's taken him a while to really break out onto the scene in Norwegian football. And now he's playing for historically the biggest club in Norway, and he's had a blinder of a season. Do we not think that he deserves to get the best possible chance to secure, whether it's a better move or a better deal at Rosenborg? He absolutely deserves that. I don't think anybody should begrudge him for that. But again, I know that's a touchy subject. Best left for probably other podcasts and other people to talk about. But yeah, I think all of that considered, all of that, you put that all together to get pretty much 1.5 goal or assists every 90 minutes is mad. It's mental. And the only player that I thought would get anywhere near that this season would be Pellegrino. So for us to be talking about Serta is insane. And to me, that is the biggest shock of the entire season. And yeah, we should not be forgetting that anytime soon. That is phenomenal. So yeah, all the plaudits to him for that. And it's absolutely fantastic.
Lovely stuff. Is that all of our picks?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
Beautiful.
We could have had loads more, I'm sure. I'm sure there's loads more that we could talk about.
Yeah.
But the fact that we've had pretty much zero crossover on all of them is actually quite nice as well. And I just thought if anyone else is going to go with Set, I'm thinking I'm sure Chris is going to mention him. So I thought it'd be a safe bet to mention him because Tom would rather eat his own hair than talk about that, I'm sure. So that was.
It's as we've talked about throughout this podcast. It's just about being an independent podcast, not a Rosenborg podcast or a Christensen podcast, or a Hamcam podcast.
Absolutely, but to not mention Serta when we're talking about top 5 shocks of the season, I think is a little bit.
It's all valid.
Yeah, it is valid. Yeah, it's a valid point. It's a valid point.
I should have. I'm going to put in a bonus one because I've just thought of it and I can't believe I didn't put it on my list. Christian Eriksen for 15 million kroner.
Yeah.
That should have been in there somewhere, but we've gone over time now and I've missed my chance. So
yeah,
it's in there. It's in there now.
It's number 6.
Yeah. Awesome. Right, we'll leave it there. It's a bit longer than I think our other episodes, but some good chat there. So cheers for that, guys. And yeah, we will reconvene next week. Cheers.
Lovely stuff. See you guys next time.
See ya.
See you later.